All right, we're talking about remains of frozen mammals. And the Arctic islands north of Siberia have been described as even more densely packed with remains of elephants and other mammals, as well as dense tangles of fossil trees and other plants north of Siberia. So much that the entire islands, all these islands, seem to be composed of organic debris. Where did all that come from? And they're all mixing and matching mammals. It's a place where there was nothing before? Oh, yeah, there was. No wonder these things have fostered tales of great catastrophes. The wonder is that uniformitarians could possibly offer any other explanation in any seriousness. There is most certainly no modern parallel entombment of elephants or any other kind of mammal taking place anywhere in the modern world. These are not fossils. These are once live, instantly frozen creatures, mammals, higher on the so-called scale of uniformitarianism and fossil tracking and so on. This is most certainly no modern parallel. There's certainly no modern parallel entombment of elephants or any other kind of mammal taking place anywhere in the world. If things are supposed to be the same as they've always been observed in modern times, okay, the other day we found a mammal that was just frozen. Let's go eat it. Let's go have dinner. None. According to their time scale, this is too they can't even have an explanation. It may not be quite clear as yet whether these deposits were made directly during the Deluge period or soon after, or both. Ice Age came on quickly. Things got frozen. People wore all kinds of animal skins, and they survived as best they could. The idea in the textbooks with the Eskimos, the whole world were all Eskimos as far as that's concerned, because there was no growth of anything. You had to go around and get what you could. So they cut around an entombed or iced entombed mammoth and ate. But it seems fairly evident that the extermination of such immense hordes of animals and their interment in what has ever since been frozen soil must somehow be explained in terms of the events accompanying just such a universal aqueous catastrophe as the Bible describes. Why did you say worldwide flood? Jeez. It has occasionally been suggested that the ocean waters would have remained warm for too long a period to allow for the preservation of the soft parts of the animals. Well, there they are. Have dinner. Just chip away and cut away the hair. The inference being that they must have perished in some other catastrophe centuries later. However, it is doubtful that post-Diluvian Siberian climates could ever have supported such a vast horde of animals. Maybe the whole thing is just time short, right? A couple of thousand years. Worldwide flood. Then you have Abraham. You have Noah after the flood. He had a son. We count to Abraham. And they might have known each other or of each other in that age. And we had a number of maybe local catastrophes in the world where these things were available. You had tremendous new weather. The animals that perished in the flood did not, of course, have to float around on the Arctic Ocean for months. They would have dissipated. Other things would have eaten them. They still had fish in the ocean waters, no matter how flooded it was. But were quickly buried in the depositional silts of the flood waters, right where they lived in the milder pre-flood climate. North of Siberia. Plants, animals, soil, mammals. The entrapped waters in these sediments, cut off from the warm waters of the open ocean, froze rapidly. There they go, forming the permafrost, the permanently frozen soils and subsoils of the Arctic lands. And it was in these that the mammals and other animals of the region were buried. As Charlesworth says, the frozen mammals, maybe 5 million of them, the frozen mammals are found in the timbered banks of rivers and in soils that nearly always contains fragments of trees. Where did the trees come from? It's the Arctic, north of Siberia. Bacterial decay was hindered by the cold climate, so have at it. The meat's really good, and by quick interment in fine silts. That's Charles' word. And he sounds like he's an evolutionist, but has to explain it in some manner, and so it has to be catastrophic. Yeah. On the other hand, most of the animals, okay, here he goes. On the other hand, most of the animals which were drowned in the flood worldwide did suffer decay, and thus may have been exposed for some time prior to burial. Putrefaction, however, seems to have started immediately after the animal's death and before burial, despite the small participation of the time. So, there's one incident, 5 million mammals, and how many other kinds of animals, mammals, and trees and soil, instantly, some catastrophic freezing. How about the Ice Age? Also, many mammoths and mastodons certainly lived during the first centuries after the flood as well, before finally becoming extinct or modified to their present forms by a genetic variation within the species. A remarkable recent study of these Arctic phenomena attributes them to violent catastrophes associated with the shifting of the Earth's crust. The convulsions postulated by Ivan Sanderson in his theory make our visualization of the deluge seem quite uniformitarian by comparison. For example, quote, a sudden mass extrusion of dust and gases would cause the formation of monstrous amounts of rain and snow, and it might even be so heavy as to cut out sunlight altogether for days or weeks or months or even years if the crustal movements continued. Winds beyond anything known today would be whipped up, and cold fronts of vast lengths would be built up. Instant freezing, with violent extremes of temperature on either side. You got water, instant freezing, frozen mammals, have at it, let's have dinner. There would be 40 days and nights of snow in one place, continent-wide floods in another, and roaring hurricanes and seaquakes and earthquakes bringing on landslides and tidal waves and others, and many other disturbances. All short-term, instant stuff, catastrophic in time and nature. Ivan T. Sanderson, Riddle of the Frozen Giants, Saturday Evening Post magazine in 1960. And you can go look for your stuff that's even recent. Just Google these older articles, and you'll find it's supported there, especially in Answers in Genesis.org and others. Sanderson attributes the quick freezing of those mammals that have been preserved whole to the descent of great blobs of chilled volcanic gases, first shot up towards the stratosphere, then rapidly falling and expelling the ground air violently outward rapidly. Maybe they suffocated. Others were overcome by the intense wind and floods. Their bones commingled with hosts of other animals as now found in Alaska and other places. So you have whole animals ready to eat and bones that are frozen, and then you have fossils. This is exactly the state of affairs we find in Alaska, where the mammoths and other animals, with one or two significant exceptions, were all literally torn to pieces while still afresh. Young and old alike were cast about, mangled, and then frozen. There are also, however, other areas where the animals are mangled, but had time to decompose before being frozen, and still others where they decompose down to root. There's no rule on this. It's haphazard, catastrophic in nature. They decompose down to bones and were then either frozen or not. Beyond these, again, there are similar vast masses of animals, including whole families or herds, all piled together in gullies and riverbeds and other holes, but where only bones remain. Where's the uniformitarian idea? See? Local citation, Sanderson is a field zoologist and author of numerous volumes on wildlife. He seems to be a little bit more observational and not so conventional towards uniformitarianism and evolution. It is interesting that the same author 13 years previously had written on the same subject, and at that time had followed the usual uniformitarian viewpoint. that the mammoths had fallen into holes or gulches or had drowned in river floods, and that the reason for their extinction was a low birth rate. Oh, man. Further study, however, has convinced him that such explanations were wholly inadequate, and he has been driven to the geologically heretical concept of catastrophism as the necessary answer. Of course, I don't know if he mentions the Bible or not. Rather than return to biblical catastrophism, however, this is what he says, he has previously written, the biblical theory that the deluge was the agency by which these animals were killed was in due course demolished by simple logic and modern rationalization. Where is that? Let me read that. No. Ivan T. Sanderson, Saturday Evening Post. Wow. He has sought a naturalistic explanation in terms of Hapgood's recent shifting crust theory previously referred to. At any rate, it is transparently obvious that the catastrophism of a very high order is alone sufficient to account for such things as these. The greatest riddle, however, is when, why, and how did all these assorted creatures, and in such absolutely countless numbers, get killed, mashed up, and frozen into this horrific indecency? Sanderson, off-site. See, we just don't know really. I mean, we don't. Let's just leave that alone. We don't want to even mention the Bible. We submit that the answer to the riddle must be found in the terms of the Genesis flood, chapter 6. And now begins another aftermath of the deluge of tremendous significance, as the modern cycle of evaporation, atmospheric turbulence, and vapor transportation, and condensation and precipitation become established. Violent weather, as opposed to pre-flood, became established. Snow began to fall, quite possibly for the first time in Earth's history. As we have already seen, there is strong evidence that the climate of the entire world prior to the flood was uniformly mild and pleasant. This snow, falling primarily in the Arctic and Antarctic regions, was of course derived from the hydrologic cycle from the waters which only recently were covering the Earth. Great amounts of snow also accumulated in the mountains, which had just been uplifted. A little bit of rain, a little bit of lower temperature, not so mild anymore, and we got snow. And you got all kinds of dramatic, catastrophic changes. In this way, large amounts, how long does it take when you have a big northeaster up in there in the northwest someplace, and then the snow comes and things just shut down in a day? In this way, large amounts of water were removed from the oceans and stored in the polar regions in the form of great ice caps, which in some instances are believed by glacial geologists to have attained the immense size of continental ice sheets, thousands of feet thick and thousands of square miles in area. This agency thus combined with the agency of orogeny, the mountain range forming to cause the retreat of the globe's encircling waters, globe. How about globe? Glove, there's no glove. Encircling waters off the continents. Question is, how long did it take? Glacial geologists have never answered the cogent criticisms of Sir Henry Haworth, president of the Archaeological Institute of Great Britain, near the close of the 19th century, who amassed a tremendous amount of evidence. Good to do these typos, correct them. Of evidence that most of the supposed ice sheets deposits may have been formed by a great flood sweeping down from the north. How about from the sky and from underneath the earth? See especially his works, The Glacial Nightmare and the Floods, and Ice or Water. So have a whole bunch of floods over there. How about just one straight flood? Both published in London, 1895. Sampson, Lowe, Marston, Cyril, and Risington, but now out of print. So, Haworth was not defending Genesis, however, in which he was not a believer, but only was concerned to show the scientific inadequacy of the glacial theory. It is perhaps illuminating to record the experience of one of the authors several years ago in the library of the University of Minnesota's outstanding Department of Geology. Haworth's massive work, Ice or Water, was found on the shelves and was borrowed for study. The first time in the 40-odd years of its residence there it had ever been checked out, or, judging from the numerous page pairs, still not cut apart from each other, even open. Wow, right on the shelf. as evidence that the Ice Age constitutes a catastrophe that is utterly inexplicable